Do this. Okay, so we're recording. So warm greetings, everybody. I hope that no one else wants to join the meeting. If they do, they're going to just probably have to wait a little bit. But anyway, I think we've got everyone here. So I sent a lot of homework for you all to do on this balance because it seemed like such a big balance, and I was getting a little bit concerned about the new people joining us that have never done this kind of work before, because it's not easy to process stuff without being facilitated. So when you're being facilitated, we use guiding questions, and when we do a group balance, normally we would find a priority person who would then be reflecting everything that needs to be looked at in the balance from their own story. But in fact, there will be something there that's going to link into, make sense for everybody else from their own perspective. So when we pick the priority person, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that they have got the worst issues, okay? They are just the best person to represent the group. So I have been the person representing the group for ease of being able to work through whatever's coming up to the best of my ability from my perspective and from my stories, my life stories, to share with you so that you can just get an idea of what these words might mean for you and how you can work through processing processing those words yourself. And like I said, it's not always easy when you don't have someone to facilitate that, because our emotions and our mind normally gets in the way. So it takes quite a lot of skill to be able to work with the guiding questions, which Module 2 students have done. So probably going forward, I'm going to put it out to my Module 2 students who have qualified to maybe take over for representing the next balance. And I would be choosing then the priority person to resemble the group, and then they would present something similar to what I've done. So that might be an idea going forward, so that I'm not doing it all the time, but we're getting someone else to participate in putting the balance together, and then we come together to discuss it and also work through the guiding questions that are getting, what is it getting us to look at on a personal level, and then how is that reflecting out into the consciousness, the collective consciousness, and affecting everybody. So last week, it's interesting because I see the balances are building up on each other. So last week we looked at femininity, harmony and balance, and we looked at the pain body. And in that story came up finances and affordability too. So we discussed that, but what's interesting is how everything plays out in the pain body. So before we move on to this balance and talk about it a little bit more, I'd like to know if anyone would like to share just very quickly, maybe any journaling or any insights that they've had from the previous balance, because you've now had a whole week to process that stuff, and maybe something came up for you. I know Monica had temporary relief of pain after the session that we did online, and that was quite fascinating, but of course it didn't hold, and I think that's because we need to go deeper. So this work always, the deeper we go, the deeper is the healing. So when we're doing group healing, yes, everyone benefits, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that the balance is going to hold, especially if there's pain playing out in the body that's relating to some stories that you're needing to go deeper on. So Monica, would you like to share just very briefly with the group what happened for you after your last session with our group?
Well, as you know, last week was my very first time in any of this environment. Having been in this environment, I've never had to deal with self-healing, or I've never been part of a self-healing group. So, as you know, I was suffering from a lot of neck pain and a lot of migraines and back pain. And after our meeting, it wasn't as if I was in a trance of any sort during the actual meeting, but there was a sort of as I said to you, I thought you were an absolute voodoo. there was a sort of a relaxation that came over me, and it was the very next morning. It was the first time I'd woken up without any neck pain, any migraines, and it was just, there was a calmness over my body, which was very odd sensation for me to have, because I do suffer quite a lot. So I'm not really sure what happened. I just know it did happen and it did work. So whatever you did, again, thank you. But there was something. I obviously I can't explain it, but it did do
Sure.
something. Yeah.
Lovely. So thank you for sharing that. So that is an example of healing doesn't take place necessarily on a mental construct. It's not happening that way. But people do like to understand what's coming up in their balance. So that's why we like to talk about it and bring it to their conscious awareness, because once it comes into conscious awareness what you're dealing with, and I do believe, Monica, you know, like all of us, many of us, let's say, some more so than others, financial stress is a huge thing at the moment. So it's very interesting that when I dowsed for what was going to be the priority for this session, that I noted that Jeff is also doing a masterclass shortly. So his subject is financial freedom. So I thought that's amazing. We're on the same frequency right now with obviously working with this. So this could be part of the groundwork. And, you know, the masterclasses are fantastic. So if, you know, you belong to Life Alignment already, or even if you don't, if you masterclasses, I think are more for people who are doing module 2 and upwards, but you could join a masterclass if you wanted to work a bit more on this. I think it's the 28th of May. So just to let you know that you can just follow that through. So yes, the idea is that when these shifts happen, they aren't necessarily happening from a mental construct, but the balance has been done. And when something is shifting, if it's related to emotional pain, or that emotional pain is playing out as physical pain, it can miraculously and simultaneously just disappear. So thank you for sharing that, Monica. And I hope that, you know, today after this balance, maybe something else will shift, and maybe tomorrow you wake up with less pain, and maybe the intensity of that pain will get less and less incrementally over a period of time. I don't know. We can only pray and hope. So is there anyone else that would like to share anything quickly about the last balance and any shifts that they noticed for themselves? Might not be physical as in pain relief, but any realizations or anything like that? Okay. Okay, I won't waste time then to wait any longer, but I do recommend that you journal after each session so that you've got something to see and monitor your growth, and your reflections just help you to go just that little bit deeper. Okay, so now we're looking at the physical blocks that were attached to this balance. So again, I sent you lots of information based on my own balance, and I'm sure some of you, if not, I hope all of you have done some work on this. And if you need any extra help, we do have Module 2 students here, and I'm sure that, you know, they wouldn't mind helping you over and above this Zoom platform if you need some extra help and support. But what I want to look at is the first balance, which is related to more of an emotional response. So that's going to have a little bit of obviously more intensity on an emotional level. So if we look at finances and financial freedom, I think we need to look at the reason why we want this financial freedom. So it's very important to know the why. And then, of course, what we're looking at is our stories, and then what is possibly causing the block in those stories. So we know that if we have financial security, we have far less stress. Okay. We know that if we have abundance of finances, we are more able to do what we want to do, and it frees us up with our time. We can do more things for others as well as for ourselves. We can have time to follow more of our passions, and maybe even take some more risks in life and that sort of thing. So how is it maybe that our blocks within our own stories are hindering us from maybe achieving the financial freedom that we've been looking for up to now? And then, of course, with what's happening globally, this is stressing us again even more. So what has been holding us back individually? What has been limiting us? What are the patterns? And how do we respond to those emotional blocks based on our beliefs and our values and our habits? So this is work for really deep reflection, and those are the kind of questions you need to be asking yourself when you do your own introspection here. So remember, my story is just an example. You look at your own story and maybe ask some of those questions. How do you respond emotionally to that? How do you react? What are the triggers for you? Does anyone want to share anything maybe with their own balance, just briefly? Any insights you've got maybe on work you might have done? Maybe some students who've worked on themselves? Is there anyone who did a balance on themselves that could share something?
Well, let me share something. Just a limiting belief that's been going on for years in my life. And I've said this morning, and spiritual work, because it comes from God, should be free. And it's something that I've been having a massive issue with, because every time I want to go into any kind of healing work, any kind of spiritual work, it's always the money issue that I sort of say, oh gosh, and I should not be credited for something that's coming through me.
Right.
It's been a massive issue in my life for years, So, I'm starting to understand that it's fine,
Oh, thank goodness.
Just a limiting belief in life.
Yeah, that's really good, Nick, because I think there are many people within the healing arts that come from that old belief of it should be given freely. But of course now it's both an art and a science, and we are trained and we spend a lot of money and time invested in what we do, especially with this particular healing modality. It's not like we just naturally gifted and giving that energy. It's our full-time passion and work to help others. And it's an exchange of energy. So money is an exchange of energy. But thank you for sharing that, Nick, because that is a very typical kind of emotional block for many healers. And so it is linked to a belief, an outdated belief that's not working for you. So those outdated kind of beliefs, we program those within Life Alignment. So there's the kind of things, for example, one could work deeper on if need be. So thank you for sharing that. Did anyone else have any insights to maybe why their pattern or emotional block is coming in as far as financial freedom is concerned? Because it's not just a matter of the economic climate right now, it's our collective consciousness as well, and how we are responding to that right now, which is adding more stress.
I can share something.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, so with the words, especially the emotional body words, the fox, fear of losing face, what popped up for me is when I read Fear of Losing Face, what face? And the image of a mask came up. So to me, that means that in some occasions I tend to step into a role, which is like wearing a mask. So I'm not authentic, so I'm not really showing myself. And that's been a pattern, and I really connect that to financial freedom, because to me, authenticity is important in my work. And it makes sense that when I'm not authentic, I'm not tapping into the flow. Does that make sense?
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
Like it does for me, but I'm not sure. Sometimes
Yes.
it's hard.
No, absolutely. And do you think that maybe also this is linked in with our ego, fear of losing face?
Yes, it is. So it's the fear of losing face, literally in that meaning. But yeah, and to me, it look, because of the fear of losing face, I may put on a mask.
Yes.
With
Thank
certain
you.
people or in certain situations. Yes.
Yeah, I can relate to that, Lena. I'm sure that many others here can also relate to that we wear different masks in different situations. And yeah, and the one thing I asked when I first started healing was, and I'm not religious, I'm very spiritual, but sometimes I speak to God, and this time I spoke to God and I said, please God, let my ego not come into my healing. Please let it just not be a part of it. And I do find that sometimes, especially when in a situation like this, there are a lot of people in a group, and I have to remind myself of that, to just be totally present and not worried about being judged. And I don't need to wear a mask. It's okay to let people know, for example, I'm new at this, and doing this kind of thing on video, which is then going to be maybe public. And it's like, wow, people might start judging me, but I put those thoughts aside and I just do the work. And I think I've come to a place where it doesn't really bother me anymore, because I'm just doing the best I can with the knowledge that I have. And I know it's going to reach the right people. So sometimes it's just a matter of, talking to yourself as well, isn't it? It's a matter of, doing that mind talk and creating, when you get a thought that's not serving you, say, how can I change this thought into one that is going to be more serving and more positive? No, that's great. Thank you for sharing. So I just want to see if there's anything else on that balance before I go on to the next one. I made a few notes here. How is your self-worth and reaction to money and your beliefs? So our self-worth definitely comes into it. Money doesn't grow on trees. Who was told that when you were a kid? I was many times, So part of that is it takes, your belief, be careful with your money. My mum always said, look after your pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. So it just depends on, what you have been programmed with as, a child. So you may have even some of those programs running around in your head about money. So what is your program? I get you to ask yourself those questions as well. So even after our Zoom chat today, you still will be downloading and processing stuff. We might not come up with the answers here, but at the end, we're going to have a feeling about how we're projecting this out into the collective consciousness. And each of us have a part to play. So how do you guys feel then about, I know sometimes it's not easy to follow your passion with the way that you earn your income. And I've said to you, I think in the last chat, that there are many people who would love to be doing something else, but they are afraid to move over and change it because they are maybe the main breadwinner in the family, and they can't just take those kind of risks. So how how do we align ourselves to having that flow of financial freedom for whatever it means for you according to your values? How do we align that with, you know, your with our own personal values and integrity, so that equals success? Anyone got anything they'd like to say on that? According to their own balance, maybe? No, not just yet. Vanish.
I can. You want me to say something?
Yeah, sure.
I personally think if you follow, if you follow your passion, indefinitely money's going to come in. And I've got this thing that, you know, people that work actually wait for retirement, that are passionate will never retire, because there's a continual thing. You can't say I'm passionate about something, you wait in a specific age, that's when it stops. So it's incremental. Like, you find that the more you follow your passion and the more people you kind of connect to, the wealth, put it that way. Because if you reach one person, there's the wealth of one person. You reach 1 million or 10 million or 20 million people, and invariably it becomes like more expansive, put it that way. So it's a continual thing. I don't really think in any way any kind of financial stability can be reached, because it's all relative to the person that and the lifestyle that is living. So but follow your passion. I always say follow your passion, follow your heart. You know?
Yeah, and then of course it doesn't feel like work, does it? It feels more like fun, and that's what most people would want. But you know, not everyone is able to have the luxury of following their passion with what they do. So they're looking for it in other ways. So what we want is just to continually look at where we are, so that we can bring balance and harmony into our lives, because everything is going to align itself with your highest value. So if I can get you to even explore that, because sometimes what you think is your highest value isn't necessarily your highest value. So if you want to go and do more work on that, you might even discover that you are not aligning yourself with your highest value. So you're not bringing that financial abundance or that attracting that financial freedom into your life, because in fact it's maybe not your highest value. So maybe you would like to just go and just explore, you know, the list of values, maybe 7 of them, and see if you can just work on that and see how you see your highest value. So there's always more work we can do. So we actually got only 10 more minutes. It's going to end in 10 minutes, and we haven't even gone to the second balance yet, priority number 2. So I'm going to move on to it very quickly, and then we're going to come in for the Lena, will you have time for the 10-minute meditation afterwards? If we come back into the link? Yeah, cool, thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at the next priority, which was now more on a physical level. So then how is this playing out physically in the body? Maybe physically as in pain, could be. So let's just have a look at these words. We had relax, okay, and the release, edgy, and habits was the life field. Oh, dumped. See, these are words here on the original. Dumped, release, edgy, relax, and fortunate, and it was linked to habits. Time frame is current. So if you might have had a chance to have a look at that and listen to what my feedback was there, some of you might have come up with your own stuff here. So what are your habits? So your habits are the things that maybe are needing to change if you are needing to align yourself or realign yourself with your values, for example. So maybe you can jot down something like that and maybe just explore it a little bit more as well. Did anyone come up with something in the second balance that they'd like to share? How did you relate to my interpretation? Did anyone have any? Could anyone?
Christine, I definitely, listening back to your voice note, there's quite a lot that resonated with me in terms of edge and relax popped up. Like I don't seem to be able to unwind or relax easily as well. And my body screams at me when I'm not doing those things that I'm supposed to be doing. I think you can feel it and see it straight away. So it will come up in forms of a rash or pain or whatever it may be. And I don't think we realize that if we're not aligning our values with what we want to be doing, how quickly we can release all these hormones in our minds that just create havoc in our bodies. So I remember in the first, if I can jump back to the first one of financial freedom, there's a lot of words that did pop up. Body was one of them, and vanish. And if we align all these things, our body is better, and our stress and negative emotions vanishes. So that can also be a freedom, and to some extent, not necessarily as much as a financial freedom, but I think it will be. And once this all happens, the fear of losing face wouldn't be applicable either anymore. So I believe that once you align your beliefs, your passions, your emotions, and have some fun, then you'll feel less helped and less controlled overall.
Yeah. Oh, Annalise, thank you for sharing that. For me, the fun part is very, very important. I mean, I love my work, but it's pretty serious work. And how often do you really have a good laugh, unless you're really having a good laugh at yourself, which sometimes we find hard to do because we take ourselves too seriously. But, we need some escape. We need some escapism. We need to lighten up a little bit more and just connect with nature and see the abundance around us in nature. For example, if we feel in and sensing this lack, and we are thinking about lack all the time, then we're going to align ourselves with that lack as opposed to the abundance. So yes, we need to see the abundance that is around us in our environment, in nature. Abundance comes in many ways, and if we start appreciating all of that, maybe we can also just create that kind of feeling of abundance in all areas of our life. So when we focus on financial freedom, we're normally thinking, I haven't got it. So you want to do everything that you can to attain it. And sometimes then that creates the fear, because you're never going to get there. You think you're never going to get there. And so the fear starts feeding again the cycle of lack. Okay, so I'm hoping that our lovely meditation that's going to follow is going to get us into that beautiful space. And I feel there was something else I wanted to say about the second priority.
Hi. Hi. I see on the chat two people asked about how does the word fox fit into the balance. And if you work with the fox as a spirit animal, it normally reveals itself. Yeah, it normally reveals itself like in times of unpredictable change, and when there's stuff that's happening you're not prepared for. So it brings you to a state of heightened awareness. Your mind's got to be working fast. You got to think about your next move. You got to be gathering up information to make your decisions quickly. So that's how I think fox fits in with this.
Excellent. I never thought of looking at it from the aspect of the spirit animal. I think that's a really good one to take into consideration as well. And this word fox has been coming up a lot, and it has got so many different meanings. So thank you for adding that, Nishi. We're picking up a lot of stuff that is globally related. So fox is coming up sometimes in many people's energy field. And so how is that also relating to what's going on in the collective consciousness is a good one, because we've all been hoodwinked and foxed so many times with social media, with fake news and all of this. So that's how it might also relate out to, you know, with what's happening today. And some people are just getting so sick of it, they're not even looking anymore at the news and looking at, you know, all these posts, because you don't know what to believe anymore. Okay, so I'm going to now, the guiding question, which I actually dowsed for before, and I've dowsed for it again, is to receive a message, an image, or a symbol of some sort. So at this point, I want to say thank you so much for participating. If you want to join in with Lena's beautiful meditation, I know it's going to be a beautiful meditation. While we meditate, we can go into that space of receiving a message, an image, or a symbol for us, and for that to go out into the world while we're doing the meditation. So God bless you all, and thank you so much for your work and your participation. And Lena, thank you so much for offering us this meditation that you're going to be giving us. So I recommend now that we close this session and come back in again with Lena guiding us through this beautiful meditation. Okay, thank you everybody.